feels great, and as you said, it's really summer Davos because it's more than 40 degrees outside.
It is. I'm feeling a bit sorry for you in that suit, but it's nice and air-conditioned in here. Look, our colleagues Karen and Steve just talking this now about the developments we've heard out of Russia this weekend. I do want to put that to you, as I said, in the context of some of the discussions that will be had this week. How are you watching this?
I think all of us are very surprised by what we saw from the Wagner Group and how this was unfolding. Very dramatic. We have to remember that Russia is also a nuclear superpower. Let's see if this will have any then implications on Russia's appetite to continue the war in Ukraine. I think this is the question we're all now struggling with. Will this lead to escalation or more willingness on the Russian side to also find solutions sticking to the UN Charter in possible negotiations with President Zelensky?
And how should governments and economies be responding? Of course, we've heard a reaction out of China today and also out of the US overnight as well. So what should governments be doing in terms of how they're watching this situation?
I think we are all very vigilant. As I said, very surprised. But I think the elephant in the room is, will this change President Putin's approach to the Ukraine war? Will he end the war based on this now and see that it's overstretched? Or will this continue? Because the war is having big negative impact, of course, mainly on the people of Ukraine, but also on the energy prices globally, but also on food, because Ukraine is one of the big exporters of grain. And in a very complicated geopolitical landscape, if we could find a solution to the Ukraine war, could end that, it would be a very, very good signal, not only for the people in Ukraine, but the war has huge negative impact also on the global south that is paying a high price. Of course, also consumers in Europe with very high energy prices, electricity prices still.
Yeah, absolutely. Bringing it back here to China and why we are here, of course, a very different scene, you could say, to what we were seeing back in 2019 when you were last here. How are you watching China's recovery right now, given that a very different story is playing out to what we were watching in Q1 in terms of perhaps the rebound not being as strong as was expected or anticipated at first, and also as the world is really counting on China, or it at least had been, to really be the engine of growth for the global economy this year? How are you watching what is happening here in terms of that recovery?
It's true that China grew very fast after the COVID restrictions were lifted. It's still growing quite substantially, but the government also now are taking the government is taking measures by lowering the interest rates and looking at other measures to revive growth further. If you look at the global picture, where we expect 2.8% growth this year, China is growing much more than that. And China is probably responsible still for 35% of the global growth. But it will be very interesting listening to the new Premier's speech tomorrow. Are there further measures to strengthen growth that will be announced? And what is the message also to the international business community that is here? There are 1,500 CEOs and potential investors here, and I'm expecting that there will be signals that foreign direct investments are very welcome, and there might be also then additional measures from the new governments to that effect.